Right. Good evening, everybody, or good morning, depending on when you're watching this. Today, we are going to talk about the Son of Man. And the Son of Man is one of Jesus' favorite titles. He refers to himself as the Son of Man. I think the Gospels called Jesus the Son of Man a little over 80 times. It's quite a lot. But the Son of Man did not originate with the Gospels and Jesus. At least the figure that Jesus is referring to with the Son of Man finds its origin in the Old Testament prophetic book of Daniel, specifically in Daniel chapter 7. So I think with anything where someone from the New Testament is drawing on the Old Testament, you have to start with the Old Testament and ask the question, what did this mean back there? And then look and see what the New Testament author or the individual in the New Testament is doing and ask, which is a different question, what is actually happening in the New Testament? And sometimes the answer to those questions are not the same answer. Although sometimes people just assume that whatever the New Testament writer is doing is exactly what the Old Testament writer was doing. And as we saw with our previous study on the suffering servant, that is not always the case. And it's not going to completely be the case today. So we'll be in Daniel chapter 7, and we'll read every word. We might not talk about every word, but we'll definitely read every word. It's only 28 verses long. So without further ado, I'm just going to share my screen and just get to it. Okay, let's start here from the beginning. Okay, are you all seeing the full screen? If you're seeing the full, if everything looks good, just thumbs up. Good. Okay, excellent. All right. So who is the Son of Man in Daniel chapter 7? Now, if you are perceptive enough, you are noticing in the background that there is Daniel surrounded by a bunch of ferocious beasts, a bunch of ferocious animals. But that is not from Daniel chapter 7. That's from Daniel chapter 6. And I think by the end of the story, you're going to see why it is that Daniel chapter 7, which is the vision of a son of man, a human being who was in conflict with these four ferocious Gentile beasts, why that particular chapter followed after Daniel chapter 6, which has a human being who, by the way, is in trouble, but ultimately, because of his faithfulness, he's vindicated by God from being attacked by a bunch of ferocious beasts. I think there's a reason why those two chapters are right next to each other, because Daniel chapter 6, with Daniel in the lion's den being vindicated by God, helps anticipate what is going to be told in Daniel chapter 7. That's not one of those things that Daniel chapter 7 actually tells you. It's one of those things that you have to read the story and kind of see how things are put together. So anyway, I just kind of thought that was, it's an interesting thing to put in the back of your mind, and you can think about as we move through in the story. Okay, so Daniel chapter 7 is this vision, and we've got this character, Daniel. He's there in the story, and he receives this vision. It's like it's a night vision. It's almost like he's sleeping, and luckily, we actually have someone in the story to help us understand what Daniel is actually seeing. We have this heavenly, angelic revealer, messenger, and Daniel's going to ask this angel, hey, what does this mean? And the angel is going to tell us. And so we don't have to scratch our heads and say, well, what does this mean? What does this mean? Because it's going to give you the answers to the test. And so I think whenever the text gives you the answers, we should take that very seriously. So I think because of that, I'm going to break things into little portions. And so you'll see here that we have the initial vision of the Son of Man, which is the first 14 verses. And then we're going to go and we're going to see how the angel gives a little bit of information here, and the angel gives a little bit of information here, and then the angel gives a little bit of information here. And that'll help us to kind of absorb and to make sense of everything that we're reading here, because in a sense, it's kind of complicated, but I'm going to try to uncomplicate things as much as possible. But really, I'm going to let the text speak for itself. There's not a whole lot that I need to say. I'm just going to kind of say, hey, look here. It explains it for us here, that sort of thing. All right. So we'll just read the first 14 verses. All right. So in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel saw a dream and visions in his mind as he lay on his bed. And he wrote the dream down and related the following summary of it. Daniel said, I was looking in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and four great beasts were coming up from the sea, different from one another. The first was like a lion, and it had wings of an eagle. I kept looking until its wings were plucked, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man. A human mind was also given to it. And behold, another beast, a second one, resembling a bear. And it was raised up on one side, and 3 ribs were in its mouth between its teeth. And thus they said to it, Arise, devour much meat. After this, I kept looking, and behold, another one, like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this, I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrifying and extremely strong. And it had large iron teeth. It devoured and crushed and trampled down the remainder with its feet. And it was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. While I was contemplating the horns, behold, another horn, a little one, came up from among them, and 3 of the first horns were pulled out by the roots before it. And behold, this horn possessed eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth uttering great boasts. Passage goes on. I kept looking until thrones were set up, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His vesture was like white snow, and his hair like the head, like pure wool. His throne was ablaze with flames. Its wheels were burning fire. A river of fire was flowing and coming out from before him. Thousands upon thousands were attending him, and myriads upon myriads were standing before him. The court sat, and the books were opened. Then I kept looking because of the sound of the boastful words which the horn was speaking. I kept looking until the beast was slain, and its body was destroyed and given to the burning fire. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but an extension of life was granted to them for an appointed period of time. I kept looking in the night visions. This is the passage we want to focus on. And behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like a son of man was coming. He came up to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him, and to him was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and men of every language might serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which will not pass away, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed. So that's the first 14 verses. And you can see from the very first verse that this is something that it's almost, I'll go back and kind of point it out there. Let's see. Yeah. So you can see the first verse is actually not written from the perspective of Daniel. It's written from the perspective of a narrator. The narrator is speaking about Daniel in the third person. He's saying this is what Daniel has already done. So I'm going to kind of approach this from the perspective that this is what a unknown narrator is saying about what happened to Daniel. Okay. So Daniel has this dream, this vision. And, it might just be good for us to just kind of, let's just recap what in the world we just read. Okay, just quick little bullet points, recapping, just telling us what we've already seen. Okay, so first thing we saw is that out of the sea, and by the way, the sea is a known symbol for the chaotic evil that opposes God, comes 4 beast. Okay, and by the way, if you've paid attention when we went through the book of Revelation, a lot of these symbols are going to be very familiar with you because we've explained a lot of them in the book of Revelation, okay? All right, so out of the sea, we've got 4 beasts, and it should be very clear by the way they're introduced that they're coming out of the sea, that these are not godly, holy, righteous animals. These are ungodly, chaotic, they're evil, they are opposed to the purposes of God. What are they? Well, there's a lion, a bear, a leopard, and a dreadfully terrible beast with 10 horns. It's not even like, we don't even name it an animal. It's just this terrible, awful thing. Okay. And then the focus of the vision, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but the focus of the vision seems to zero in on that fourth beast, and particularly on its horns. And out of the horns, we have a little horn. The little horn comes up from among the 10, and it's described as destructive and boastful. Okay, we have a judgment scene, which appears with the Ancient of Days, and I think we could pretty much assume that the Ancient of Days is God. God takes his throne, court is in session, and the books are open, okay? The little horn continues to boast until its corresponding beast is slain. Remember, the little horn is associated with that fourth beast, okay? But out of heaven, which is known to identify God and God's agents, comes a human being, a son of man. And this scene, or the scene, is set as a deliberate contrast to the four beasts coming out of the chaotic sea. Okay, and that's really important because at the very beginning, we have four animals that come up out of the sea, and they're not coming up out of the sea because they were swimming or they were scuba diving. They are coming up out of the sea because the sea represents evil. It represents that which is chaotic, okay? So when we have the Son of Man who comes out of heaven, it doesn't mean that he lived in heaven. It means that he is identified with heaven, which is the opposite of the chaotic sea, okay? And he's meant to be like a figure, a human figure, that is contrasting, deliberately contrasting these four other beasts, okay? By the way, read in the background, the image that you see in the background. Okay. We also see that God shares with the Son of Man God's own dominion, God's own glory, and God's own kingship. And therefore, the Son of Man is a royal figure deserving of worldwide service, okay? He's a human being who has dominion and kingship, and so people are going to serve and they're going to worship him, and he's going to have an everlasting dominion that's never going to be destroyed. Okay, so that's just a recap of what we've just seen. All right, in a sense, kind of pretty straightforward. Okay, so the next four verses I gave a title to. This is the first interpretation of the initial vision. The initial vision is the first 14 verses, but the next four verses is an interpretation that's given to it. Okay, so look, we're just reading the text here. Reading out of the Bible. As for me, Daniel, my spirit was distressed within me, and the visions in my mind kept alarming me. I approached one of those who were standing by and began asking him the exact meaning of all this. So he told me and made known to me the interpretation of these things. And here we have this angelic revealer from heaven telling us the interpretation. So this is the angelic interpreter talking. These great beasts, which are four in number, are four kings who will arise from the earth. But the saints of the highest one will receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever for all the ages to come. I'm not sure though why I have a close parentheses. I think that's probably a mistake. Okay. Anyway, but that's what we have there. That's the four verses. Okay, so let's before we go any further, let's recap what we just read there, because he just gave us an interpretation of the first 14 verses, okay? So he tells us, by the way, that the four beasts are four kings, okay? Now, when the book of Daniel was translated, and this particular part in Daniel chapter 7, originally written in Aramaic, but it gets translated into Greek, they translate these kings as kingdoms, because a king represents a kingdom in the sense like Biden represents a nation, Putin represents a nation. Okay. So I'm just kind of showing that that's not only the initial interpretation, but also the initial understanding of it from a Jewish perspective. So four beasts represent four kings, probably four kingdoms. Okay. We could see that they were coming out of the sea, but it's interesting. I don't know if you noticed this, but the angel said they are coming out of the earth. And so you kind of see that, okay, the earth is also evil, like the sea is evil. But here is the interesting point. This is the point that I think is very interesting, because the angel does actually give us an interpretation of the Son of Man. I don't know if you all caught it. Okay. The Son of Man, who is to receive a kingdom for God, is described as the saints who will receive a kingdom. In other words, and this is really important, the Son of Man is interpreted as a human representative for God's holy people. I'm going to say that again. The Son of Man is interpreted as a human representative for God's holy people. Okay? Just make sure that we're absolutely clear on this before we move any further. In the first 14 verses, we have the vision to where a human being receives a kingdom from God. When the angel interprets that vision, he doesn't say that there's a single human being that receives a kingdom from God. He says it's a plural group of saints who receive a kingdom from God. So we have in the initial vision one person, a human being, who is interpreted as a group of saints, a group of holy people, a group of holy ones. That's very important, very, very important. And that gets overlooked nearly every single time that people think about Jesus, the Son of Man. They don't think of Jesus as the Son of Man specifically as a single human being who represents God's people. But that's literally what the angel is telling us. Very important. Okay. I would say that's probably one of the most important takeaways you can take away from this particular study. So when the angel reveals to us what the Son of Man means, the Son of Man is a representative for a plurality of God's saints, God's holy people. Okay? Very important. Okay. So then we read the rest of the passage, which is verses 19 through 28, and that's just the end of the chapter. Okay. So you'll kind of see how the flow goes. So then I desired, this is Daniel speaking again, then I desired to know the exact meaning of the fourth beast, which was different from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, with its teeth of iron and its claws of bronze, and which devoured, crushed, and trampled down the remainder with its feet. And he desired to know the meaning of the 10 horns that were on its head, and the other horn, which came up, and before which 3 of them fell, namely that horn which had eyes and a mouth uttering great boast, and which was larger in appearance than his associates. That is a long, crazy run-on sentence. So Daniel wants to know about the fourth beast. He wants to know about how terrible it is. He wants to know about the 10 horns, and he wants to know about this little horn and the fact that 3 of the horns get killed. Okay? I kept looking, and that horn, actually, did I skip anything? No, I didn't. Okay. I kept looking, and that horn was waging war with the saints and overpowering them until the Ancient of Days came and judgment was passed in favor of the saints of the highest one. And the time arrived when the saints took possession of the kingdom. Okay. Thus he said, this is therefore the angelic revealer authoritatively revealing to us the vision. So Daniel asked, hey, tell me what these things mean. So now the angel is telling us, quote, the fourth beast will be a fourth kingdom on the earth, which will be different from all the other kingdoms and will devour the whole earth and tread it down and crush it. As for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom, 10 kings will arise, and another will arise after them, and he will be different from the previous ones and will subdue 3 kings. He will speak out against the Most High and wear down the saints of the highest one. And he will intend to make alterations in times and in law. And they will be given into his hand for a time, times, and a half a time. But the court will sit for judgment, and his dominion will be taken away, annihilated, and destroyed forever. Then the sovereignty and the dominion and the greatness of all the kingdoms under the whole heaven will be given to the people of the saints of the highest one. His kingdom, namely the highest one, God's kingdom, will be an everlasting kingdom, and all the dominions will serve and obey him. Then the last verse, at this point, the revelation ended. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts were greatly alarming me, and my face grew pale, but I kept the matter to myself. And there you have it. There you have it. Okay? What's interesting, I don't know if you've caught this, but we're doing a study on who is the Son of Man, and yet the Son of Man appears one time in the entire vision. One time. Now, the vision gets unpacked, and we've already seen that the Son of Man is a representative for the holy ones, for God's saints. By the way, the word, if you guys didn't know, the word saints and holy ones all comes from the same original language. In Hebrew and in Aramaic and in Greek, the word for holy ones can be translated as saints and vice versa. Okay, so let's recap what we just saw in that last little passage, because I want to make sure that we're going point by point and just making sure we're all on the same page. Okay. So Daniel asks the angelic revealer about the fourth beast and the little horn. All interest in the first three beasts has passed. I don't know if you caught this, okay? That even though we're talking about four beasts, really the focus has really just been on the last one. The little horn was waging war with the saints. That's the holy people of God, okay? This conflict continues until God judges the situation and gives the kingdom over to the saints. The fourth beast is described to us as the fourth kingdom on the earth. Remember how we saw earlier that the four beasts were four kings, and it's very likely that the four kings were kingdoms. Here we're seeing, just to confirm that the fourth beast is specifically called a kingdom. Okay? And this fourth kingdom is depicted as devouring the earth, treading it down, and crushing it. So even when we compare it to the other three former beasts, the lion, the bear, and the leopard, this fourth one seems to be far more violent. We learn that the horns on top of this beast head, that they're actually kings, human kings. And the little horn is a particular king who will subdue three other kings. Okay? So you got 10, you add one to make the little horn, so that 11th one removes 3. Okay? And the little horn, he's going to speak against the Most High God, and he's going to wear down the saints. Okay, so there's going to be conflict. There's going to be conflict between this little horn and the people of God. And the people of God, they're going to be worn down. They're going to be at war. They're going to, it's going to look like they're losing in a sense. And the little horn will make changes to times and in regard to the law. That's really important, because we're going to look in history and we're going to pinpoint exactly who this person is, so there's no question about it. Okay? And it said that the saints will be given into the hand of the little one for 3.5 times. Okay? Now your translation will say time, times, and a half time. Okay? But what that means is basically time, that's 1, times, and what's meant by that is 2. So now you have 1 plus 2 and a half times. So you have 3.5 times. Okay. And then we see judgment's going to take place. And at the time of the judgment, the saints are going to be vindicated. Remember that they were at war with this little horn. The little horn was wearing them down. The little horn was subduing them. But God's going to intervene, and the saints, the holy ones, are going to be vindicated. And then the kingdoms of the world will be given to the people of the saints. Okay. There you go. All right. So let's just kind of put this into its context. Let's just make sure that we are, you might be sitting there thinking, okay, what do I do with these beasts? Like, when the world is going on, I've got this lion, I've got this bear, I've got this leopard, I've got it might help us. I don't know about you, but it helps me to figure out where in the world are we in the world history? Where are we in history? Okay, and so I think that might help us. It's not so important when it comes to understanding the significance of the Son of Man, but this might help you just to kind of let's just figure out where in the world we are, so we can just make sense of what's actually going on here. Okay. So the lion. Again, I'm going to make an argument to you. You guys can tell me if you're convinced or not. Okay, so I think the lion is in reference to Babylon. How do we know this? Well, Jeremiah has already symbolized Babylon as a lion in a couple of passages in Jeremiah. Okay, Jeremiah was written hundreds of years before the book of Daniel. Okay, so that's already been out there. We learn that the lion's wings are plucked in the passive voice, suggesting that God took them in the manner that God humbled Nebuchadnezzar for his prideful arrogance. In Daniel chapter 4, we can see that Nebuchadnezzar, has to get humbled by God. And so what do we see? We have a Babylonian lion get its wings plucked away passively, likely by God. Okay. that's pretty non-controversial. I think like most people think that the lion refers to Babylon. Okay, the bear, probably in reference to the nation of Media. The people of Media are called the Medes, Medes. Okay, we see this bear is propped up on one side, probably suggests a lack of historical achievement. You probably have never heard of Media and the Medes, unless you're just a really diligent reader of the Old Testament, because they just don't have a lot of historical achievements. But we can see the bear's ferociousness probably is explained by the fact that Media actually tried to go to war with one of the Babylonian kings, in particular, the Babylonian king Nabonidus. Okay. Third one, the leopard is probably in reference to Persia and to the Persians. Okay. So we can see the leopard is described with swiftness, and the swiftness of this animal is actually confirmed in Isaiah chapter 41, verse 3, which portrays Cyrus the Persian. So we know it's a Persian. He's actually having feet that, quote, do not touch the path. And what that means is that he's running so fast that it looks like his feet aren't even touching the ground. And so that seems to make sense of the animal that's clearly known for its speed. The leopard has 4 heads, and the 4 heads of Persia, we actually are told later in the book of Daniel, in chapter 11 and verse 2, that the 4 heads of Persia refer to 4 particular kings. So we have confirmation later in Daniel chapter 11 of this 4-headed Persian animal. Okay, so again, we're on pretty safe ground there, even though it looks like the fastly running leopard is not on firm ground. He's just running really fast. Okay, the 4th beast and the little horn. I think you got to kind of interpret these together. I think this is in reference to Greece, the Greek Empire, and to the figure called Antiochus Epiphanes IV. Okay, I'm going to abbreviate Antiochus Epiphanes IV as AE4. You're going to see that because I'm tired of writing the whole thing out. Okay, now history actually recalls that Antiochus Epiphanes IV murdered 3 Greek rulers. We know who they are. We know that there's Seleucus IV, Demetrius, and there was another Antiochus who was an infant that was supposed to grow up and be king. Okay, they were all in that Greek empire. So we know exactly who the 3 people are that Antiochus murdered. We know that he altered the Jewish calendar. Okay, and the quote unquote 3.5 times fits the timing of the Maccabean revolt, where Antiochus Epiphanes persecuted the saints of God. And from 167 to 164 is a 3.5 year period. Okay, so all those things are pretty non-controversial. I mean, we know exactly in history who these people are, when the time period is, who this person is, what it actually means that he made alterations to times. Like we are pretty confident with this particular answer. This is nothing here is really controversial. Okay, now in fact, we have a historian from the 1st century, a guy named Josephus. And Josephus, by the way, is living in the time of the Romans. Okay, and this is what he says. He says, quote, "And there would arise from their number a certain king who would make war with the Jewish nation and their laws, deprive them of the form of government based on these laws, spoil the temple, and prevent sacrifices from being offered for 3 years. These misfortunes our nation did in fact come to experience under Antiochus Epiphanes, just as Daniel saw and wrote that they would happen." Okay, so Josephus tells us, hey, we know what Daniel talked about. We know that this is in reference to Antiochus Epiphanes. These things already took place. Okay, so that's a authoritative 1st century reading of these things saying, hey, this is what is taking place. Okay, he does not interpret these beasts as Romans, despite the fact that Josephus is there in the midst of the Roman Empire. He knows that Antiochus Epiphanes is from the Greek Empire, and that the things that are mentioned in Daniel, and it's mentioned in other chapters as well, are in reference to Antiochus Epiphanes, who was a Greek king. Okay, so that might kind of help us to situate where we are within that particular story. Okay, but this story is about the Son of Man. We're interested in the Son of Man because we are Christians. Jesus claimed to be the Son of Man. We need to figure out what is it that Jesus is doing by looking at this story, seeing the Son of Man figure. Okay, remember, the Son of Man is a representative for God's holy people, for God's saints. Okay, What was Jesus doing when he saw this and he said, I'm going to take that vocation upon myself. I'm going to take the destiny of this Son of Man, and I'm going to take it upon myself. Well, let's look at that a little bit. Okay, so Jesus embodying the role of the representative Son of Man. Okay, that's what I think Jesus is doing. Okay, so we're just going to look at a couple places in the book of Mark, a simple gospel, the book of Mark, and see where Jesus is claiming to be the Son of Man. And we're going to note, now that we have a pretty thorough understanding of Daniel chapter 7, the sort of meaning that Jesus is applying to his own actions and his words. Okay, so let's look. This is the very first time that Jesus claims to be the Son of Man is in Mark chapter 2. So where Jesus says, son, your sins are forgiven. And then you've got the people saying, who can forgive sins but God alone? And Jesus responds and he says, but so that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. And then Jesus says, pick up your pallet and walk. Okay? So Jesus is able to forgive sins. The people are saying, wait a minute, only God can forgive sins. And Jesus responds and he says, I am the Son of Man, and I have authority. I have this authority on earth to forgive sins. Okay? So here's the question. If Jesus has authority, where did he get this authority from? Well, we know the Son of Man, remember, you can read in Daniel chapter 7, verse 14, the Son of Man received from God dominion, glory, and a kingdom. Where did the Son of Man get his authority? Well, he got his authority from God. So the point here is that, yes, God can forgive sins, but Jesus is claiming to be that human being whom God has authorized with God's authority, dominion, glory, and kingship. Okay? The very first time Jesus claims to be the Son of Man, he's claiming someone who has already received this authority from God. And that only makes sense if we understand the image of the Son of Man from Daniel chapter 7. Very important. Let's look at another passage. Mark 8:38, Jesus says, whoever is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will also be ashamed of him when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. So here, it's interesting. Jesus says, if you're ashamed of me, then the Son of Man is going to be ashamed of you. But of course, Jesus is talking about himself. He's not saying me and the Son of Man is someone else. He's saying me, namely, I'm the Son of Man. But he's talking about a future coming. We would call this the second coming of Jesus, the second coming of the Son of Man, who is going to come in a sense of judgment. He's going to come and he's going to be ashamed of people because of their words, because of their actions. But notice that Jesus comes in the glory of his Father. Okay? Now, back in Daniel chapter 7, we have the Ancient of Days and the Son of Man. Who do we have now? We have the Father of Jesus and the Son of Man. So who is the Ancient of Days? The Ancient of Days is the Father, is God the Father. Not just God the Father, it's Jesus's Father. Now, we already knew this. Obviously, we know this as good Unitarians, as good monotheists. But Jesus here is saying that the Father of the Son of Man is that one. And notice, Jesus comes in the glory of his Father. Jesus has the Father's glory. That's a big deal. God sharing his glory. Remember, we read in Daniel 7:14 that God is giving the Son of Man dominion, glory, and a kingdom. Here, the Son of Man comes in the glory of his Father because the Father has shared his glory with Jesus. Okay? So that all makes sense now that we've got a good sense of Daniel chapter 7. Jesus is seeing himself as that particular figure. Okay? Now, here is a verse that I know many of us, and I did for many years of my life, we just read over this verse and we don't think much of it. But I want to suggest to you that there is something far more controversial going on here. Look what Jesus says. Jesus says, and how is it written of the Son of Man that he will suffer many things and be treated with contempt? Jesus, you know how in the Gospels, Jesus predicts his death. He says, oh, the Son of Man is going to Jerusalem. He's going to be betrayed. He's going to be handed over, and he's going to be killed, and then he's going to rise on the third day. But here Jesus is saying it was written of the Son of Man that he's going to suffer many things and be treated with contempt. Okay? Now you might think to yourself, oh, the Old Testament, it writes of the suffering of Jesus in like Isaiah 53 or in Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me? But none of those passages, neither Isaiah 53 nor Psalm 22, refer to the Son of Man. Jesus here is saying it is written of the Son of Man. The only place that talks about the Son of Man is Daniel chapter 7. But in Daniel chapter 7, you have these four beasts that are fighting the Son of Man until there's vindication. And then it gets revealed that these are four kingdoms that are fighting the people of God. And the people of God suffer. The people of God are the ones that are being waged war against. The people of God are the ones that are given into the hand of the little horn. The people of God are being worn down. Okay? Jesus, I'm arguing to you, Jesus sees himself as that human representative from Daniel chapter 7 that represents the suffering people of God. I'm going to say that again. Jesus sees himself in Daniel chapter 7 as that human being who represents the suffering people of God. That's how he can say that it is written of the Son of Man. The Son of Man would suffer many things. Because the only passage you can get that from is Daniel chapter 7, to where the Son of Man, interpreted as the holy ones, the saints, they are the ones that suffer. Very, very important. That just gets overlooked. Okay? He sees himself here as that human representative of the people of God who are suffering. And of course, you can see a few verses later, he was teaching his disciples and saying to them, the Son of Man is to be delivered over into the hands of men. They will kill him. And when he has been killed, he will rise 3 days later. Okay? Remember, in Daniel chapter 7, it's the people of God who are suffering, who are at war. The people of God are being worn down. And notice this, they are given into the hand of the little horn for times and a half time, likely a three and a half time period. Okay, Jesus here says that he will be vindicated 3 days later. It's likely that 3 days is drawing influence from this 3 times or this 3 times and a half sort of imagery that's actually going on there. Okay, because again, Jesus says that it's written of the Son of Man. He is drawing these things from Daniel chapter 7. Okay. And then Jesus, before the high priest, says again, the high priest asked him, are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One? Jesus said, I am, and you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven. And so what Jesus does here is that he actually says that, yes, I am the Son of Man. I'm going to be seated at the right hand of power, but the Son of Man is one and the same as the Messiah, the Son of God. So right in that passage right there, we learn, we already knew this as Christians, by the way, we learn that the role of the Messiah is also the role of the Son of God, and it's also the role of the Son of Man. You would not know from Daniel chapter 7 that the Son of Man is the Messiah, the Son of God. That is not an Old Testament teaching. You have to get that from Jesus. Now, we all know this from hindsight, but here is a passage where Jesus makes that clear. Are you the Messiah, the Son of God? Yes, and you will see the Son of Man doing this. Messiah is Son of God, is Son of Man. Remember that Messiah is the anointed king of the kingdom. The Son of God is the title for the king. And remember that the Son of Man is the one that is given dominion, glory, and kingship. He is the one he's a ruling figure. He's a royal figure. And so that makes sense that the Son of Man is described as the royal kingly Messiah, the royal kingly Son of God, Son of the Blessed One. Okay. So you're seeing here that we can put a lot more meat on the bones when we see Jesus talking about the Son of Man. We've got a pretty good understanding of what in the world was going on with Daniel chapter 7. And as I tried to point out, Daniel chapter 7 literally explains itself. If you walk through it line by line, slowly and surely, the angelic revealer tells you the answers to what basically all of the points mean. Okay. By the way, I don't know if you've caught this, but again, in Daniel chapter 6, you have a human being who is faithful, and because of his faithfulness, he is put into conflict with these ferocious beasts until God steps in, issues a judgment, and the human being is vindicated from these faithful beasts. What do we have in Daniel chapter 7? We have ferocious beasts that are in conflict with this Son of Man, this human figure, until God jumps in with judgment and God vindicates that particular human being. And the vision gets explained as these Gentile nations that are not attacking one particular person, but are attacking God's holy people, the saints, the people of the saints of the highest one, okay, until God jumps in and vindicates them, okay? And again, I don't think it's an accident that Daniel chapter 6 was put right before Daniel chapter 7, because it's supposed to help us to anticipate those particular things. Okay, the three applications. How can we take this understanding of the Son of Man and apply these things to our life? Number one, since the Son of Man was a human representative for the faithful saints of the Most High God, Jesus' decision to take the role upon himself indicates that he saw himself as a representative of humanity. And this should give us pause as we consider and marvel at how the death of Jesus can cover the sins of so many. We just take it for granted, the fact that Jesus died for all people. But one of the ways that Jesus understood this was that he was the Son of Man, who is the representative of the suffering people of God. So the Son of Man can die as a representative for all of these other people. So it gives us a little bit more understanding of how Jesus understood his destiny on the cross. And you know what? I think that gives us more reason to appreciate God and his plan and Jesus and how he understood his messianic mission. We can marvel at that, I think. Number two, as the Son of Man, Jesus is a highly empowered human being who has been the recipient of God's dominion, glory, and kingship. And so the application is that the Christology of the New Testament depicts Jesus as an authorized man bearing the prerogatives of God. So Jesus does all of these really, really powerful things, not because he is God, but because he's a human being whom God has shared God's own prerogatives, God's privileges, God's attributes. But God can share that with a human being. And number three, by taking upon himself the vocation and the destiny of the Son of Man, Jesus put his trust in the Ancient of Days to vindicate him for a faithful life lived. In other words, the Son of Man finds its meaning as one who relies on God's faithfulness to rescue, vindicate, and even raise from the dead. And this makes the Son of Man a model for faith, especially since he is a representative of holy people. Okay? So Jesus was a model of faith and faithfulness, and he is our representative. Then we too should be faithful people who rely on God to rescue us, to vindicate us, and ultimately to raise us from the dead. Okay, so that is what I had to share. So I will stop sharing my screen and open some things up for questions, comments, clarifications, whatever it may be. So. I'm going to go George and then Dean and then Donna. Go ahead, George.
Hey, Dustin. Thanks for the teaching. You left me with a ton of questions. I'm just going to go with the most simple one that struck me first. The pre-existence of Christ was a pretty big thing in the churches I was in, and they was always talking about it, and I was led to believe that they had a faulty system of belief. Anyway, they would use in Daniel 3:25, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace, and then there was this section that said the fourth is like the Son of Man, Son of God, or Son
Yeah.
of Man. And is there any translation in Aramaic or Greek that says that it was the Son of Man or Son of God? In other words, do these people use 325 as evidence as a pre-existing Christ? And I don't see that, and I just needed some more evidence to back up my thoughts.
Sure. Okay. So are you able to look at that passage in Daniel chapter 3 so I can point out just a couple of things?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So just for everyone to kind of know, in Daniel chapter 3, we have Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego thrown into the fiery furnace. And then when Nebuchadnezzar looks down, he doesn't see 3 Jewish boys. He sees 4 figures there. And let me see actually where the let's see where the verse is.
4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt. And the form of the fourth is like the Son of God.
Yeah. Okay. It's like a son of God. There's no definite article there in Aramaic. It's just like a son of God. Now, there's a particular phrase, son of God, that shows up in Hebrew and in Aramaic, which refers to an angel. And here's the thing. The passage here in Daniel chapter 3 removes the ambiguity because it tells us in verse 28. Nebuchadnezzar said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel and delivered his servants."
Yes.
So it tells us in the passage that this is not the Son of God, a pre-existent Jesus. It's an angel. And so that's what I would say. So there's no translation issue there. I mean, there shouldn't be a definite article there. It's just a Son of God. Okay. But like in Genesis chapter 6, the sons of God cohabited with the daughters of men. We know from the New Testament that refers to angels. We know from Job chapter 1 that the sons of God refer to angels. Okay. So the same thing is happening there in Daniel chapter 3. And of course, the passage tells us exactly that sort of thing.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep.
I'm sorry. I'm going out of turn here.
Let me jump to Dean first, and then I'll come right to you, Donna. Go ahead, Dean.
Okay, this is I'm noticing in Ezekiel where he's called Son of Man in several different chapters.
Yep.
But this is not the same type of thing.
It's similar. So Ezekiel is written in Hebrew, and Son of Man is just basically a way of God saying, "Hey Ezekiel, you're just a mortal. You're just a mortal human being. You're just a guy. You're just okay." That's not the same thing as this particular Son of Man figure in Daniel chapter 7, which is written in Aramaic. Okay, so they're referring to 2 different things. Now they're similar in the sense that they're human beings, they're mortal, they are descendants of humanity. That's basically what Son of Man means, a descendant of humanity. But the Son of Man in Daniel chapter 7 is not Ezekiel, and vice versa, and they're written in 2 different languages.
Okay, and I haven't checked the Old Testament, but I'm sure that applies to several others throughout the Old Testament. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's
I'd have to look up in the concordance and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's Daniel chapter 7, and that particular reference to a Son of Man seems to be its own argument in and of itself. Okay, now I could footnote that and say, well, I do think Jesus also drew upon Psalm 8, but I would need 20 minutes to go through Psalm 8 and explain a lot of stuff that's going on there. But generally speaking, I'm going to say Daniel chapter 7 is its own argument, and it's not it's its own self-sustained argument. It doesn't need anything else in the Old Testament to make it work, other than maybe.
Yeah, the reason being is because he's representing the holy ones.
Yes.
And that is the only reason. That's the distinction between any other form of Son of Man.
Yes. Yeah. Great point. Very, very good point. You only get the sense that the Son of Man represents God's holy people in Daniel chapter 7. You don't get that anywhere else. And I think that is a often overlooked piece of the definition of Son of Man that Jesus takes upon himself, that readings of the Gospels just overlook. I think people miss that all the time.
So that is the distinction then.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Good question. All right, Donna.
Well, this is the most cohesive teaching I've heard. Dean kind of already shared what I was going to say. I love that you draw upon history too, and corroborate other sections of scripture with this. And you just do a great job there, Dustin. My mind's still reeling, putting it all together, but I love it. You pointed out Josephus and other books, historical records of history, drawn upon history to piece together what this means, and not just I really appreciate that. People say all kinds of things because they're not really intellectually looking at scripture through the eyes of history. They're making it up and fabricating a great deal of what they think Daniel is seeing over here. And I've probably heard a lot of those sharings and twisted thinking about, blown versions of what's going on here. But I love that you drew upon history and that you mentioned Josephus. It's just, to me, it just shows the laser-like interest that I need to continue to acquire in my thinking when I'm reading, and the answers are there and the interpretation, it was there, in full. And I just love it. I really appreciate it. There's lots that I'm thinking that I can't really say, but I really appreciate it. Great stuff.
Well, I'm aware that there are a lot of other teachings on Daniel chapter 7, which is partially what I'm doing, is that I'm trying to persuade you all that this reading is the right reading, because maybe you've heard something else. I can also tell you this: there is not a single thing that I told you today that I came up with on my own. Everything that I got today is out of like other books on Daniel. This is the dominant scholarly view on Daniel. This is not some sort of fringe view that if you read this one crazy wacko scholar, he'll tell you, or this one teaching on YouTube. This is what the majority of scholars across the board who focus on the book of Daniel, this is what they're saying. So none of this is interpretation. This is 0% Dustin. I'm just copying other people. So I'm not smart. I just read a couple of books and I just put it all in a presentation.
That's great.
So, okay, Phyllis and Steve, I think they're next.
I was just going to make a comment. I was going to ask a question about it another time, but I always wondered when Jesus would speak about Son of Man, it would always sound like he was talking in the third person. And I always wondered, I had thought about this at another time and wanted to ask, but now that I hear this and how it's really being tied to Daniel, I think I'm understanding more why he spoke that way. At first I was thinking it's just a Jewish way of expressing, but it was almost like he was always speaking as like Son of Man was a third person. I knew he was speaking about himself. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think I understand what you're saying, because we read a passage where it says, if you're ashamed of me and my words, the Son of Man will be ashamed of you. It sounds like he's talking about someone else. And people have actually tried to make that argument. I don't think it's very persuasive, but there's a sense to where it's like Jesus saying, this is what the Messiah is going to do. This is what the King is going to do. The Son of Man is going to be betrayed. Clearly, he's referring to himself, but he's referring to himself in that sense in a way that no one else has ever done. Like no one before him was seeing their own life and ministry and destiny and relationship with God in the sense of the Son of Man. That's something Jesus was very original of doing. But I understand what you mean by that, because it's because other people, other very, very smart people have actually come to those same conclusions. So I don't think it's very crazy at all, actually. I don't know if does that answer your question, or I know you made a comment.
Yes, yes, it did. Thank you.
Yeah.
This
Okay.
was really a good teaching.
Bart Ehrman really, some of the stuff he wrote really made me question my faith quite a while ago now. But that was one of the things when he started making the argument that Jesus was talking about the Son of Man as somebody else sometimes. I went back and really paid attention, and it's pretty clear a few places. I'll have to go back and find it. You probably know, but it's pretty clear he specifies that he is the Son of Man. But yeah, like Dustin said, that's definitely not just you or anything.
Yeah, he's one of those persons that makes the argument that Jesus is not the Son of Man, and
right.
But I just don't think that view is out of fashion right now. Like there's very few people even make that argument anymore.
Oh wow.
So, yeah, that is not a dominant view at all. I mean, the suggestion would be that, well, Jesus didn't really say this; it was just invented by the early church. But the problem is that the earliest writings that we have come from the Apostle Paul, and Paul doesn't call Jesus Son of Man at all. So it wasn't invented there. It's as if you get to Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John, and it's just understood that the audience, Jesus starts talking about himself as the Son of Man, and nowhere in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, or John do these authors explain to the readers what that means. It's almost as if it's understood what it means. Everybody knows it. Everybody agrees on it. There's no controversy that's there. No one invented it. No one came up with it. And, by the time you get to the book of Revelation, Jesus, just flat out, John sees in chapter 1, I saw the Son of Man as Jesus coming to speak with him. Like it's, there's no controversy anywhere else in the New Testament with the whole thing. I mean, I know that's kind of a long footnote to your question, but I'm aware of that, that very small minority scholarly argument. I don't know, maybe someone watching the video will find appreciation with that. So anyway, okay. Edgardo, I think you're next.
Thank you, Dustin. You had a very good studies on Daniel chapter 7, and I like it so much, especially when you have explained every representation of every beast that was presented by Daniel in chapter 7. That's a good study, really. I only have one request here. I just want you to please explain furthermore Daniel chapter 7 verse 18, because the word saints there is in the plural form, right?
Yes, the saints or the holy ones.
Yeah. And are they referring to all of us, or just something to do with the Son of Man representing all of those?
So it's kind of two different questions. We could ask the question, what did Daniel 7 mean when it was originally written? And then, of course, as Christians who have been grafted into the people of God, we are now a part of God's holy people. A different question is, what would this mean to us today? So what it means to us today is that, yes, we are God's holy people. So we could see that, like that God is going to give the kingdom to us. God is going to enact judgment and do that. And there's a sense to which that we are already participating in the kingdom of God right now. We already involved, the kingdom as we're doing kingdom ministry. There's already a sense where that's taking place. Okay, so yes, we are a part of God's holy people, God's saints. If you are a child of God, but originally this was referring to the nation of Israel because they were the only people of God at the writing of the book of Daniel. So originally, like the holy ones referred to Israel. Like you've got 4 nations, and you've got the Son of Man, which basically represented Israel. 4 nations represent Babylon, Media, Persia, and Greece, and the Son of Man represents the nation of Israel. So because they were the holy ones at that particular time. Now we have been grafted into that. So it's 2 different answers to 2 different questions. Does that help make sense?
Yeah, thank you, Dustin. Thank you so much.
Good question. Okay. I know some people who had already asked questions still have their hands up. I don't know if they still have questions or if they're just still there, but I don't want to.
Dustin, can I ask one question?
Oh, please go ahead.
Does this passage, is this passage also referred and referenced in the book of Revelation? Because this 3.5 and these kind of phrases are also there.
Yes, because the 3.5 year period, which was a time of major persecution of Antiochus Epiphanes, persecuting the Jewish people from the years 167 to 164, commemorated by Hanukkah. That time period was known as this difficult time of suffering and persecution. And so when Revelation draws of 3.5 years referring to a time of persecution of 4 nations attacking the faithful people of God, it uses that to describe images of persecution and revelation, because that number 3.5 is just already carries that meaning. It carries that meaning because it's something that the Jewish people would have recognized by celebrating Hanukkah year after year. They would have retold that story and they would have recounted those events. So it's not that Daniel 7 is a prophecy of Revelation. It's that Revelation is drawing on these images which have these particular meanings because of what actually happened in history as vital, important parts of Jewish history. I don't know, does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. It's also interesting, and I think this is kind of a coincidence, but I think a lot of people know that in the first century, the Jews revolted against Rome, started this war, and Rome went and tried to attack Jerusalem, and eventually Rome destroyed the Jerusalem temple. And the time from when the war started, which is another time of persecution, I think it was like September of the year 66, and the temple was destroyed in March of the year 70. That also coincidentally is a 3.5 year period. So by the time Revelation is written, you don't just have one, you have 2 different periods of vital parts of Jewish history that are involved of the persecution of the people of God by foreign entities. And so it's like that meaning of 3.5 years or 1,260 days or 42 months had all of this meaning that was just built up into it. So, but you have to like build that up with the history and work on it from there. So I don't know if that's prophetic or not. It's just interesting that works out that way. So, and I remember those dates. It was September of 66 all the way to March of the year 70. So, okay. Dean, did you still have a question?
No, not anymore.
Okay. So I imagine for a lot of people that this is something that you might go back and watch again, just to kind of slow down and pause and maybe try to catch some of the details. And that's okay. I know it's a lot of stuff there, but excuse me, we have it on video now, and people can do that. And my hope was just to help us to have some more significance and value to Jesus as the Son of Man, and not just look at that as, oh, Jesus claiming to be a man, claiming to be a human being. No, it's more than that. He's a representative of God's people. He's a representative of the suffering people of God, about whom it was foretold and written that these people would suffer and they would be given into the hand of pagan powers. And also the Son of Man is someone that God gives God's own dominion, glory, and kingship. So he's a highly empowered and authorized human being. And I think that actually makes the Son of Man a very, very important figure. So I think it helps us to read the Gospels a little bit more dynamically. So that was my hope and goal of doing this particular study. So
I do have something to say, and this is what I thought before. I thought he was using that term as a term of humility. That's what I thought before.
Okay.
Referring to himself as Son of Man instead of, declaring Son of God,
Yeah. Well, there's
that's what I thought it meant.
Well, hopefully I've given a little bit more for us to think about on that topic. And of course, as we pointed out, the last mention of Son of Man in Mark's Gospel has Jesus claiming to be the Son of Man alongside claiming to be the Messiah, the Son of God. So he sees all of those as bound together in his own person. So, okay. Thanks for watching. For those that are watching this, you can get in touch with us by looking at the description below the video, and we'd love to have fellowship with you if you want to join in and study with us. So thanks so much for watching. Have a good day.